I never expected to hear those words from my own father. She's nothing, a failure. Should have never been born. That's what my dad said when he thought no one was listening. For years I'd paid the mortgage on our $830,000 home where they lived rent-free. I'd sacrificed everything for them. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just made a decision. 1 week later, I sold my luxury home and moved to another state. I left them alone with the consequences of their words. Before I dive into my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for what happened after I discovered the truth about my family's true feelings. It's a journey that might help anyone dealing with toxic family relationships. My name is Audrey Foster, and at 31, I'd built what most people would consider a successful life. Every morning, my alarm would go off at 500 a.m. and I'd drag myself out of bed for an intense hour-long workout in the home gym I'd set up in the basement of my luxury home in the Chicago suburbs. After a protein smoothie and quick shower, I'd be out the door by 7:15 battling traffic to reach my downtown office at Hartman Financial Advisors. My colleagues saw me as the perfect example of hard work paying off. After graduating with my MBA from Northwestern, I'd secured a position as a financial analyst and steadily worked my way up. 3 promotions in 5 years had put me on the fast track, and my boss, Victoria Hayes, had taken me under her wing as a mentee. Audrey, you're going places in this company, she'd tell me during our monthly check-ins. Your attention to detail and dedication to clients is exactly what we value here. What they didn't see was what waited for me at home 3 years ago. I'd purchased my dream house, a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in an upscale neighborhood valued at $830,000. I'd planned to live there alone, maybe eventually with a partner. Instead, within 2 months of moving in, my parents, Raymond and Margaret Foster, had moved in with me after my father's construction business went bankrupt for the second time. It's just temporary, sweetheart, Mom had assured me, just until we get back on our feet. 3 years later, they were still there, and I was still paying for everything: the mortgage, utilities, groceries, even their cell phone bills, and car insurance. They contributed nothing financially, not even token amounts for household expenses. Dad spent his days applying for jobs he never seemed to get, while Mom volunteered at church and met friends for lunch every Wednesday evening. My sister Heather would bring her 3 kids over for family dinner. She'd married young to her high school boyfriend Keith, had her first child at 21, and had dropped out of community college. Despite this, my parents beamed with pride whenever she walked through the door. There's our girl, Dad would say, embracing her while barely acknowledging my presence. After these dinners, I'd retreat to my home office to catch up on work. Exhaustion settling into my bones. The weight of supporting Gavrion was crushing, but I'd convinced myself it was my duty. I was the successful one. After all, this was what good daughters did. My best friend, Zoe Curtis, never understood. Audrey, they're taking advantage of you, she'd say during our rare lunch dates. They're adults, they should be supporting themselves, not living off their daughter. They're my parents, I'd reply, the familiar defense automatic. By now Dad's still looking for work, and Mom never had a career. What am I supposed to do, throw them out on the street? Zoe would just shake her head, knowing there was no point arguing. She'd known me since college, watched me achieve every goal I set for myself, only to hand over the rewards to my family. That Wednesday morning, I had an important presentation for a potential new client, a retirement fund worth millions. Victoria had entrusted me with the lead, assigned she was grooming me for the next level. Land this account, and we'll be talking about that senior analyst position she'd promised. As I straightened my blazer and checked my appearance one last time before leaving, I caught sight of my father in the kitchen sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. Big day today, Dad, I said, trying to inject some enthusiasm into my voice. Wish me luck. He barely looked up. Sure, honey, good luck. I drove to work, pushing down the familiar sting of disappointment. Today was about my career, about proving to Victoria and myself that I deserved that promotion. Today was about my future. Little did I know how drastically that future was about to change. The presentation went better than I could have hoped. The clients were engaged, asking insightful questions, and by the end they were nodding along with my recommendations. Victoria caught my eye across the conference room and gave me a subtle thumbs up as we wrapped up. The CEO of the retirement fund shook my hand firmly. Miss Foster, you've clearly done your homework. We'll be in touch very soon. After they left, Victoria pulled me aside. That was excellent work, Audrey. I think we've got them. Take the rest of the day off. You've earned it. Excitement bubbled in my chest as I packed up my materials. I couldn't wait to share the news with someone, and despite everything, my parents were the first people I thought of. Maybe this time Dad would actually approve. I checked my watch. 2:30 p.m. They wouldn't be expecting me for hours, which meant I could surprise them with the good news and maybe even suggest celebrating with dinner out. When it pulled into our driveway, I noticed both their cars were there, unusual for a Wednesday afternoon. Mom usually had her book club. I entered quietly through the side door that led directly to the kitchen, planning to announce my early arrival and my success, but then I heard my father's voice coming from his bedroom, which he'd converted into a home office of sorts. He was on a video call, his voice carrying clearly down the hallway. Yeah, Stan, we're still living with her. What choice do we have? The housing market is ridiculous these days. I recognized the voice on the other end as Stanley Bennett, my father's friend from his construction days. I was about to call out when something in my father's tone made me pause. Hold on, let me end this call properly. Audrey's always nagging me about just hitting the red button. I heard a click followed by me father's voice again. There, now we can talk freely. Except he hadn't ended the call. I could still hear Stanley asking if he was still there. My father had only minimized the window, thinking he'd disconnected. She's nothing, Stan off. All yours. Should have never been born. The words hit me like a physical blow. I froze in the hallway, unable to move forward or retreat. Sure, she makes good money, my father continued, his voice dripping with disdain, but what kind of life is that? 31 and still single, married to her job. It's pathetic, and she lords it over us like we should be grateful she's letting us live here. At least you've got a roof over your head, Stanley replied, his voice tinny through the speakers. Yeah, but at what cost? My dignity. Do you know how embarrassing it is when people ask what I do, and I have to admit my daughter supports me? It's humiliating. What about Heather? She doing okay? My father's voice immediate testifed, pride evident in every word. Now there's my real achievement, 3 beautiful grandkids, a solid marriage. Sure, she didn't go to some fancy college like Audrey, but she's got what matters, a family, love. Keith's boosiness is doing well enough. They're talking about buying a bigger house soon. I heard the bedroom door open and Mimother's voice joined the conversation. Who are you talking to? Ray. Just Stan. We were discussing the girls. Oh, my mother's voice grew quieter as she moved closer to the computer. Did you tell him about Audrey's promotion, the one she won't stop talking about? What's there to tell? Another rung on the corporate ladder. Big deal. I know my mother sighed. Sometimes I wonder where we went wrong with her. So cold, so focused on money and status, not like our Heather. Exactly. The only good thing about living here is we're saving a fortune. Another year or two, and we can't afford to put a down payment on a place near Heather and the kids. That's the dream. My mother agreed. I'm tired of walking on eggshells around Audrey, pretending to be interested in her work. Stories. Remember last Christmas when she gave us those expensive watches? My father laughed like we needed a reminder of how much money she has. So tasteless. My stomach lurched. Those watches had cost me $3,000. I'd spent weeks researching the perfect style for each of them, wanting to give them something special that would last. Well, we'll just keep playing the game for now. My mother said she needs us more than we need her, even if she doesn't realize it. Without us, who does? She have no husband, no kids, just that awful friend Zoe who keeps putting ideas in her head. True. Remember when Zoe convinced her to take that trip to Cabo instead of helping us with the bathroom remodels? Selfish, both of them. I'd canceled that trip at the last minute after my father complained about needing help with the house projects. I'd lost the deposit and used my vacation days to paint and tile instead. The conversation continued, but I couldn't bear to hear more. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Nausea swept over me in waves. I backed away silently, grateful I'd worn flats instead of my usual heels. So Maui made it back to my car without being detected. As I sat behind the wheel, my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't insert the key. Fragments of their conversation echoed in my mind. A failure should have never been born. My real achievement, saving a fortune the girl they wished had never existed, was bankrolling their comfortable retirement. I don't remember driving to Zoe's apartment. I must have operated on autopilot, muscle memory guiding me through familiar streets while my mind replayed 31 years of memories in a harsh new light. The times my academic aviums were acknowledged with distracted nods while Heather's C+ in art was displayed proudly on their refrigerator. The college graduation party, they left early because Heather's Son had a cold. The countless times they needed loans that were never repaid. By the time I parked outside Zoe's building, me shock had hardened into something else, something cold and clear and certain. For the first time in my life, I saw my family exactly as they were, not as I desperately wanted them to be. They said what? Zoe's voice echoed through her apartment as I recounted what I'd ever heard. Her normally calm demeanor had given way to rage on my behalf, her hands gesticulating wildly as she paced back and forth. You need to confront them right now, she insisted, reaching for her phone. I'll drive you back there myself. I shook my head, curling deeper into the corner of her couch. I can't go back there tonight. I can't look at them knowing what they really think of me. Zoe sat beside me, taking my trembling hands in hers. Then stay here as long as you need. The shock was wearing off, leaving room for memories to surface, elements I dismissed or rationalized away, now returning with painful clarity. Like each time I'd used my entire first year and bonus $15,000 to pay off the remaining debts from my father's failed business. He'd accepted the check with a casual "thanks, kiddo," before immediately calling Heather to discuss her eldest son's private school applications or the European vacation I'd planned for years, postponed 3 times to cover family emergencies. The first for Dad's knee surgery, which somehow didn't prevent him from playing golf 2 weeks later. The second for Mom's car accident, minor but requiring a replacement vehicle they couldn't afford. The third for Heather's unexpected medical bills when insurance wouldn't cover her youngest daughter's treatment. When I finally moved into my house, the crown jewel of my achievements, they'd shown up 3 weeks later with suitcases and sad stories about their landlord selling their rental property. I'd given